Ah, wow. Chameli,
Mm.
hello.
Hi.
Okay, let me do just a little formal introduction number, and then we are going to dive into, I think, a very rich and meaty conversation. So I just want to let everyone know that I'm Alexandra Pope, and I'm co-director of Red School and co-author of Wild Power. And I'm here with Chameli Ardagh, who is the founder, director of the Awakening Woman Institute.
Women.
Women, Awakening Women Institute.
Many women.
Many, yes, you have a huge reach. You have been doing this really glorious work with women around restoring a feminine embodied spirituality that is just a spirituality that is sort of coded for the psyche and soul of the female, of women, yeah. And so you can say a little more in a moment on that, Chameli, but I just want to add that we have come together because at Red School we're going to be running a menopause, an online live menopause course. And we have come together to have a conversation about the awakening process of menopause. I call menopause the great awakener. And so I thought it was just perfect for us to have a conversation, for me to have a conversation with you. So both of us have gone through menopause. And so I think we've got an awful lot to share with women about the sacredness, what I call the holy role of menopause, the holy process at work in menopause. So, Chameli, please just say a little bit more, if you like, about what you do, and then let us tenderly edge our way into the waters of menopause.
Well, I have spent the last decade in the woman's room, in the woman's circle, and it is both for each one of us in the circle. It is a very, very intimate process or of awakening and focused on direct experience, and yet there's also transmission happening among the women. And I was lucky. I moved to California, I think 18 or 19 years ago, and I was embedded into a woman's circle already then. And many of the women there were older than me, and they were going through menopause. And I remember that I witnessed the journey that they went through, like nothing like anything I've ever seen before. I never had this kind of breadcrumbs or blueprint of how to go through it as a rite of passage, as a vision quest. And I saw these women, my sisters, going through it with such a courage and dedication and commitment to go as deep as they could and take the opportunity for this rites of passage that menopause is. And I remember at that point witnessing them. I knew that my way of going through it down the road and my way of aging was fundamentally and irrevocably changed by this transmission and that these sisters gave to me. They imprinted in me a different path, and it felt like an ancient path, just a path that I, growing up in a modern culture, had forgotten. But my cells, the cells in my body, remembered. But nothing that I witnessed could prepare me for what it actually was.
I know.
It is such a inside, it's such an intimate experience. Nothing that you see on the outside it can really, really reflect the depth and the mystery.
I love those words. I love, firstly, that you were imprinted with a new way. And I think that's what women are really needing. I'm hoping that our conversation itself can imprint something for women. And I love this word intimate, because that has been core for me too, Chameli. It has brought me into it brought me into such an exposed place within myself. A deep, deep, exposed, deeply exposed place. And it's almost, I remember slapping my forehead and going, oh my God, so this is who I am. Oh, it was revelatory. But the exposure initially, the intimacy is almost, I'm going to say, almost too much. I mean, you need time. This was my experience of, you need time to sort of let yourself down into that intimacy, because you are being exposed to the divine, ultimately, I feel suddenly sort of, oof, I've got to stop for a moment. What has come to me is one of the things I see happening when women go into menopause. They just want to get away from the world. They're saying no to everything. They just suddenly, nothing interests them. They don't want to engage with things. They just want to walk off into the sunset, as I say, walk out the front door. Bye-bye, everybody. I'm off. Don't know when I'm going to be back. This profound need to get away from normal life. And it is because this intimacy is calling, and you can't get there whilst trying to live life in the normal way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember these women in my women's group. I remember at that point I was in my 30s, and I was frustrated because it was impossible to make appointments with them, because they would at any moment, say, no, I have to be in the garden now. And I was like, but part of me was frustrated, but part of me was like, are you allowed to do that? Like, one woman, she said, no, I have, my whole life I have been, in service to the different social codes and requirements. Now I'm only in service to my body and the signals, and that's my authority. And I'm deeply committed to that, to listen moment to moment to my body. And again, I was like, am I allowed to do that? They opened a portal of something that I didn't even know was on the menu. And for me, it's been the same now. I mean, I have always been extremely introvert, so it wasn't that big of a shift in the set outwardly, I think. But the last years for me has been a lot of saying no, a lot of clearing away, creating open space. It's been very kind of instinctual, almost, I think, similar to a cat creating the nest for birth, or a woman nesting. It's the same kind of sense of instinctual clearing away, creating open time, open space, which sometimes require of us to trust, an authority that oftentimes speak in very subtle voice. And I love what you speak about, the exposed. It's very precise.
It's very precise.
I feel exposed in the most intimate place. And for me, the last years has also been an unraveling and exposure of personality structures that I haven't even seen, that have been blind spots my entire life, that I just call myself. And in this light, the brilliant light of awakening of the menopause passage, they have been seen for what they are, just borrowed clothes or structures that have more like coping mechanisms. and then, you know, the thread has been pulled, the unraveling has started of these structures that I don't need anymore. And then again, a deeper exposure, like you said, of the divine. Yeah.
I want to track with so many of the things you're saying here. There's so much richness in here, Chameli. Let me see if I can, yes, this need for spaciousness is really, really crucial, so that a woman can start to really hear herself. And I loved how you described these older women of years back who seem to be following all sorts of sort of, you know, subtle little somethings. Oh, I think I'll just go now. You know, yeah, but bye, with no rhyme or reason or explanation. It's like they've just got this little call, you know, on the ether to get, you know, to get out or whatever. And one of the things I often say to women is, you know, when they're cycling, the menstrual cycle, as long as you're not suffering, is sort of like this sturdy ally that's just there, you know, this repeating rhythm each month that sort of holds you. And a lot of women do go into a kind of panic when it goes. It's like, oh wow, you know, how you know, it's going. How do I sort of hold and steer my life? Because especially for those women who are very conscious of their cycles, working with their cycles very consciously, and suddenly the cycle is not doing what it should do, and they're a little bit all over the place, and they go, you know, what do I do? And I actually have to just say to women, nothing. This is the point. You are actually entering a great void now, and all normal signposts are falling away. All societal signposts, all the ones that you have used to date, like through your cycle and whatever, that's actually going to fall away. And I use the analogy of setting forth on a little tiny vessel onto a dark, unknown ocean. It's night, it's dark, and it's just you in this little vessel, and you're pushing away from the shore, and you cannot see any land or anything. And I say to them, it is just the stars in the night sky by which you are going to track this passage. And those stars are your feelings, your intuitions, little insights you get, thoughts that pop into your head. It's all going to come from just inner moments, inner thoughts, inner knowings. And for a while, there won't be any. And you just got to kind of sit there and just hang out in this vessel. And you use that word trust.
Mm.
If you haven't developed some trust in yourself, and I feel, you know, if you've lived a solid life, especially if you've been, I'm thinking of all the women in your community, you know, who've been working so intimately with themselves, they have got the trust muscle there. It's going to be tested, but it's there.
Yeah.
It's there. And it's like, you've now got to just go, okay, yeah, I'm a grown-up girl now.
Yeah.
I'm going to trust myself. I'm going to push off from the edge, and I'm just going to trust the unknown, and that things will come to me. And they do. They absolutely do. But they don't come on your timing, your sort of egoic timing. It's the soul timing. And I just really want to pick up this thing about your blind spots. Because I thought, oh, that's so spot on. I remember the word that I used was, in fact, how did I used to I'd sort of go like this sometimes. Oh my God, you know, and like, oh, geez, I did that, did I? I said that, oh, like, I was sort of shocked by my arrogance, you know. It was humility. It was huge doses of humility. I really got to see my blind spots. Then the upside of that for me was that it was actually incredibly liberating to go, oh, I'm not that kind of person. Yeah, those weren't my strengths, you know. Yeah, I have to be careful around those things because I'm not very good at them. but I'm very good at this. It was a recognition of what my blind spots were, what I wasn't good at. But then the flip side of that was the recognition of who I was.
Mm.
And that was so lovely.
Mm.
That was so lovely, yeah. So it was a healthy dose of humility.
Mm. 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 Yeah.
And then a kind of relief, actually. Oh, so this is
Yeah. Yeah. My experience that all of that energy that was kind of held hostage in these patterns,
yeah.
are liberated and fed into source, into soul. In one way, I think my teenage years were, I keep referring back to the teenage rites of passage because I feel, physically and spiritually, it's a equally strong, profound, and all-encompassing and fundamentally transformative rites of passage. And where in the teenage years you're kind of finding yourself, and in one way you're building up a certain self.
Mm.
And my experience with this menopause rites of passage has been a crumbling of what I call myself. And as you say, somehow I have been preparing to be able to rest in the more vague, undefined self. And in that opening, there's a sense of, I rarely use the word soul, but there's a sense of part of me that are incarnating fully for the first time. It feels like part of me has not fully had space to fully arrive, and it's this sense of pieces of me arriving for the first time, and I go like, wow, all these years, and here it is.
Here it is.
Yeah.
I really want to pause on that one.
Mm-hmm.
I can second that, and I just really want to hold what you've just said then. Fully incarnating for the first time, experiencing pieces of yourself for the first time.
Yeah.
Yes, Chameli.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a paradox, because it is a sense of pieces fully embodying. So there's a sense of more myself, and yet at the same time it's also a sense of spaciousness and less defined, both. So it's transcendence and embodiment, both.
Yes, for me, I come back to this word intimacy. I feel such an intimacy within myself, but an intimacy within life. It's like a quality of union or belonging. I love this word belonging. I feel like I belong now. I belong to the earth. I'm going to cry. I can feel tears coming. It's very beautiful. I belong. And I don't belong to a particular piece of the planet, although that it might be that for some people. I mean, I do belong. I feel I belong in England now, because I think you may know I lived in Australia for 25 years, and I loved it there, absolutely, and I miss it. But gosh, being back on the soil of England, I knew, oh yes, this is the soil now for me. But it is a belonging to the world, to the soul of the world, ultimately. So it is this sense of, it's a deep sense of meaning, and in service to the soul of the world. Yeah. And these are very grand statements, because I often think, yes, I have this deep sense of belonging to the soul of the world now, and I'm in service to that. But I am very human, Alexandra Pope, as well. I'm very human. I have my vulnerabilities. I have my human foibles, and so on. There's a very kind of, I don't know how to say it really, a sort of egoic sense of self in there, that's there, and solid, and And then I have this huge vulnerability to life. I am, yeah, I feel hugely exposed to life. And I think that's where menopause delivers you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember when I was younger, I often talked in the circle to my community about, to the women who are going through menopause. And especially in Europe, there's very little awareness of it. And because when I moved to California, it was just a whole different awareness and reverence for the process that I never knew about when I lived in Europe. And in my German community, and I always told them, oh, you have to write a book. You have to speak about menopause. Why don't anybody speak about menopause? And now, when I have gone through it, I understand why it is, because I'm a teacher, I'm a writer, and I understand how you cannot really put the process within the paradigm or the framework or the maps that we are used to, because the process itself is not only the content of the process, but the way of the process is just so different. And we don't have much framework to hold it. So I just love that you have done the groundwork for this and are able to create a map. And in the way that you described about the little boat and the stars, and that's the map. In that way we have map and framework, but it's not really linear, do this or this phase and go into this phase. It's not really like that at all.
No, it isn't. I mean, it's so interesting what you're saying here. And these are one particular thing that I'm hearing, firstly, is when you said there is no map, there's nothing that prepares us for this. And there isn't. No, hang on, let me slow this down because I've got another thought popping into my head. So the thought that has just popped into my head is that actually what's missing is the menstrual cycle years. That actually if a woman is practicing conscious cycle awareness, and particularly paying attention to her experience of menstruation, she's going through a very mini little practice run each month when she bleeds. She gets a little taste, a little training ground for the things that she's going to go through at menopause. Only at menopause, instead of being over 4 or 5 days, it's going to be over 4 or 5 years that she's going to encounter this. But it's like the cycling years are toning you up or tuning you up for menopause in lots of different ways, and we could come back to that if we have time. So that's one thing that's a problem for women, is they're actually arriving at the door of menopause sort of untutored in cyclical consciousness in a way, in large measure. But also, even with that tutoring, there is a great big massive hole they're going to fall into. And it's a bit like, I haven't given birth, but Shani always tells the story, she did all the wonderful birth preparation for her first child. She felt like she'd really kind of got it, and the contractions began. She thought, oh yeah, I could do this is great. And then the midwife turns up and says, oh, you haven't started, darling. No, you're not even there. And then when it finally hit, Shani went, oh, holy shit, yes. And she was, she was way kind of suddenly out of her depth. She knew then, oh, this is it. And it's sort of a bit like that with menopause. So ultimately, it is a great unknown. But the thing that has been sort of growing in me recently, Chameli, is that if a woman can trust herself and trust the inner movements she's having, like the impulse to step away from the world and to do less and create space, that is menopause, the intelligence of menopause organizing her. So there is an intelligence at work in that menopause transition, and it has her, if she could only trust it. So, and if she can trust it, she will find then there are in my work, and this is what I'm going to be teaching in the online course, there are what are called 5 phases to the process, but it's not a tidy process because, as we've just said, and the cycle is not.
No, but I love your capacity to, like in Wild Power also, your capacity to highlight the nuances is just so helpful. It's a very, very unique gift you have, and I'm so grateful you.
Oh, thank you for
that you are sharing that with the world.
Well, yes, if women, the thing about understanding the 5 phases of menopause is that if women start to have very particular experiences, they are able to locate themselves. When they know about the 5 phases, they can go, oh, okay, that's because I'm in the first phase right now, or the second phase. And that's very, so, particularly, for instance, rage. Never mind anger, it's rage. That women, is, often the dominant emotion. And when you understand the nature of what happens when you step into the unknown, rage is a healthy response. It's actually a sign of waking up. So when you understand that, when you've got these clues and you can locate yourself, you can go, oh right, so this is where I am, and then these are the instructions then for how to care for myself. Because if you're feeling profound rage, you've really got to care for yourself. Otherwise, you're going to have, people aren't going to love you. And well, yes, and you're going to be in a very reactive place, and you've got to learn how to hold that energy in a way that doesn't damage you and your nearest and dearest, whilst also reaping the awakening that's happening in it, and reaping the power that is locked in there. That rage is just profound awakening going on. It's revelation. It's revelation, but it hits you as rage first. That's how it kind of comes. And then as time passes, you kind of settle, and then the dust settles and you get to see more, happening. Yes. Gosh, I feel almost spent, actually, talking about all that with you. And I think I'm going to change tack slightly, and I'm going to ask you, Chameli, having gone through menopause, so we've talked about the importance of time, of space, this need for spaciousness. And I'm interested in what else you've noticed you needed, or what you did for yourself, or, if you were to give women your sort of hit list of of to-dos,
Yeah.
To use my language.
Well, one thing that I didn't do until recently was to work with a naturopathic doctor, which I see in hindsight that it maybe had served me to do that earlier, because there are some physical symptoms that they can help you with, and they can support you, because it is not only a spiritual journey, but it's a very intense physical shift in the body. And to really take that seriously, and like to really to not kind of brush over that, to take responsibility for that, of how, like, I love that you have these tips of how to take care of yourself in each phase. And I have, I'm very good at taking care of myself, but when I went to the doctor, there was a lot of lights that went on when she did tests, and all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, a lot of the tiredness and the suffering was actually, very, very physical things, imbalances that I could supplement with and support. So that is one of the things. Another thing that I did to some extent, and I actually could have done more, was to prepare a little bit, because it's going to come. And part of what really supported me through it as a self-employed, and part of this organization that is kind of depended on me being inspired or doing work. There's nobody can step in for me in that way. And what I did early on was is to create systems that could carry me even when I was,
Yes.
you know, in the cave. So, because it was 2 years, the last 2 years, I have been, you know, spending months just wanted to be alone, just wanted to be inwards. I don't, you know, not any external uh, impulses, but I have systems in place and I have support in place, so that it, you know, the last year it has felt like my team and the systems has carried me through. Like instead of me feeding this, they have carried me through. And systems also include, you know, women's circle and support and all of this, but also practically, and that is something that we can prepare for. You know, set up automatic bill payment before your brain goes foggy and you begin to forget. You know, there are things that there are things you can do that just makes it easier. uh, uh, yeah, prepare for it like you would prepare for if you're expecting a child. You know, you have the period,
Exactly.
you have the 9 months. There's things you can do before the baby is
Yeah,
conceived.
exactly.
Yeah.
That those are there any more tips? Because I'd love to just go back to those. It's too.
Well, one thing, just to refer back to the women that I spoke about in the beginning that kind of imprinted in me and modeled for me a different way of being in menopause, I just want to again affirm that to anyone who feels guilty of taking too much space, who feel that they are, you know, something wrong with them, or that people are upset around you. Just know that it can be the, like it was for me, the most powerful imprint. Even though it was inconvenient for me and maybe I was irritated in the moment, still there was something deeper waking up in me, that these women were carving a path for me. So that is also something just that, you know, want to remind women that even people are in the moment a little upset. If we are true in this way, I feel that it is serving everybody.
It is absolutely serving everybody. I'm reminded of, actually, when you say that, I'm reminded of a lovely story of an Italian woman. She told me this when she came to a workshop that I ran in Italy on menopause, but she had just done this spontaneously for herself, just listening to herself. So she was married, you know, her husband was a doctor, she had 2 daughters, and, you know, she was a classic Italian mama, but she had had her own profession. I think she was a speech therapist or something like that. And her daughters were in their teenage years and she was just on the edge of menopause. And she got this part-time job that required her to travel to another city and so 2 or 3 days a week. So she had this time in the car on her own. And this was probably the first time that she'd had space for herself. And it became this sort of bubble of, you know, sort of presence with herself, the journey to and from work. And out of that, she had this impulse to call a family gathering around the kitchen table. And she formally said to them, "Things are going to be different now. I am not going to be there for you in the same way." And the daughters were slightly sort of uncomfortable, you know, because suddenly they were going to, and they were sort of saying to Dad, "Dad, can't you slip something," because Dad's a doctor, you know, "can't you slip something in a tea, i.e. a hormone," you know, because of course they have to change. You see, we are changing and we're stepping up to a new level of authority and responsibility for who we are in the world. Equally, our nearest and dearest are going to have to change because we're not going to be there for them in the same way, you know, caring for them. So it was just such perfection, that story, largely because it wasn't because she'd come to a workshop and then marched home afterwards and said, "This is what's going to happen." No, she had space for herself and this arose inside her. It was so beautiful. Lovely, lovely story. So yes, I'd love to just come back to the symptoms thing and this thing of taking care of your health. You know, I had such a good conversation with Lara Bryden, the naturopathic doctor who's the author of the Period Repair Manual. I spoke with her this morning and we're going to be posting her call at some point soon too. And she really spoke about this, we were talking about in your late 40s when your body starts to change, and because apparently progesterone drops. And she said the first thing to do is drop alcohol. That was the one thing she said really strongly: alcohol, just stop it. Stop it, because it just affects everything. And she says once you're through menopause, you can actually pick it up again. So that she was very strong on that. And there were just so many. You've really got to up your self-care. You can't put yourself last anymore. You've got to actually prioritize your health now. And I think what you've just said there about actually going to a practitioner and really getting things checked, a naturopathic physician, a doctor, is really crucial. And then you're setting yourself up well for menopause itself. And then through menopause, yes, fierce self-care through that time. Because what you're doing again, so prior to menopause, you're setting yourself up for menopause. But as you go through menopause, what you're doing is you are actually setting yourself up for a vital post-menopause life.
Mm.
And we've got so much to offer post-menopause. I think I have this secret thing. I'm always joking with women I run workshops. I just feel post-menopause women should just go into politics, and just do their version of politics.
Yeah.
I really, don't sit around, just get out there, do your version of politics. It can be, and then I tell them just to ignore me, but that's my opinion.
No, listen.
And, get political. We've got, partly because we don't care what people think in the same way. So there's this huge liberation. And then there's this fierce authority that comes up in us, and an authority that is in service to something larger than us. It isn't about self-aggrandizement anymore. So we want to set ourselves up for a brilliant post-menopause life. So take care of your health. So yes, prepare. Yes. I think we've covered everything there, Chameli. Yeah.
And then it's also one of the experience of having is also just that it's the way I would describe it is just that, relationships dynamics are oftentimes are very predictable hooks we throw at each other, and the other one is going to bite the hook, and then we kind of each move out of our inner connection and into some kind of entanglement. And what I noticed, and really in awe, is just how these hooks, especially with my husband, he has the most sticky hooks for me, and right now I just see them come and go. Like they don't have the attraction. It's not adhesive anymore. Like, so it's a sense of, but to such an extent that I notice that I'm really noticing, oh, I used to bite that hook and now it's just not interesting for me. So it's also a new way of learning to relate. That is, for me, that has had a lifelong relationship with the codependency. Is like it's just more of that untangling and ungluing. My allegiance to these patterns I can't find it. And I guess that's what you also call this authority. It's a sense of loyalty to a deeper assignment or to a deeper, my loyalty is that in that intimacy. And that's where I navigate from, which is a remarkable place to be.
Wow, that's so beautiful. What you're saying, a commitment to a deeper assignment. And so you're not biting the hooks.
What other people think or approve or not approve, like that's on them. That's on their side of the court. So it's not like something. The earlier me would be so much over there, trying to modify or trying to manipulate, I guess. But now it's like it's so obvious that is whatever is happening is whatever opinions other people have is happening in their consciousness. It's nothing to do with me. It's a freedom in that. Yeah.
I really love what you're saying there.
Mm.
I love that phrase. That might slip into my book because I'm writing on that. I'll quote you, Chameli. I really like that. Yes, yes. It really is liberating on so many levels. Menopause. That is that's the outcome of it. It's this real feeling of being free to be yourself now, so you don't have to perform for others in the same way or at all. It's the most lovely freedom. I feel probably we are coming close to the end of our time together, Chameli. I just wonder if there's anything more you'd like to add before we finish. Any other lovely thought?
Just very grateful that you opened these conversations, and that you put words and maps to this very, very subtle dimensions of ourselves. And I'm really passionate about supporting you and holding that space for the women, because it is so needed, and it's a certain kind of medicine that our society is not getting, because we don't even have, because it doesn't exist in our consciousness. It doesn't exist, like it doesn't exist in our language even. So it doesn't really exist, that phase of womanhood. It's like, we have different phases of womanhood that we relate to, and that this phase is just so taboo. It's just so under the radar, and in that we are also missing we're missing a medicine, a wisdom, like you said, that could be useful in politics and in all kinds of places.
Yes. Oh, thank you very much for saying that, Chameli. I'm very, very touched. I love how you use language. I love how you're framing things. It's very wonderful. And I feel as though I've had a really original conversation with you, fresh conversation about menopause. And I really hope that it's been useful for women. I want women to know they are okay, that there's nothing wrong with them. And if they but trust this transition, this dynamic that they're going to go through, they're going to find that they're actually in safe hands, that there's a meaningful process at work, and that they are being remade, recalibrated was the phrase that Lara Bride was using this morning. You're being reformed, and what did you say? Incarnating, yes, for the first time. It's like you're coming into this kind of unique incarnation of yourself. But it's not a chaotic, it can feel chaotic, but it's actually not chaos. There's an order, an implicate order at work. And it's that magic word, trust, Chameli.
Yes.
To help women.
And and it's so beautiful I can feel also like you, like so touched, because just these words that we are trying to attempt to describe with us is just in itself so valuable. Because I hang around with women all the time, and in my work and everything. And when the hot flashes started and all of that intensity, I was like looking around at the woman in the bank, or the woman, driving the bus, and I was like, is this like is everybody going through this? Like, and why are we talking about this? This is so intense.
Yes.
And all the women here pretending that this is not happening, or what's going on? Like, how can you function? Like, I have a work that I can kind of, I could sit in a women's circle and just, flood, have all of this hot flashes and everything. But then I realized that like when I asked people about it, they said no, but many women don't go through it, because of course you medicate it, but also just that, we try to hide it because it doesn't have room in the definition of women's participation in society. It hasn't been included
No.
in our definition of who we are and what we are
No,
contributing.
so now, Chameli, we are formally declaring that this is included.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's fiercely powerful. And there's gold in there. There's gold in there for us. Yeah. Well, I could, of course, I could just go on happily talking to you, Chameli, on this topic, but I think probably we have covered sufficient, and we don't want to outstay our time with everybody. So, deepest gratitude for this conversation and for the sharing of the message into you and and I will at the bottom of, in the Facebook Whatsy, I shall put links for women who want to know more, because we at Red School are offering this 6-week live online course, which starts at the end of October, but we have a free call on the 18th of October that women can join and get something juicy from the call itself, and then also learn about the course as well. So we'll put all that information into Facebook for women. So thank you, Chameli.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Fabulous to connect to you. We should have more conversations.
Yes, please, let's.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. Okay, my dear. You have a wonderful day. I'm now at the end of my day. You're just at the start of your day. So thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, love.